Before we go any further, if you care about the hidden overlooked technologies of the Second World War, the kind of details most documentaries skip, make sure you subscribe to Hidden Histories WWII right now. This channel exists for people who don't just want dates and battles, but want to understand how soldiers actually survived. What you're about to hear is one of those stories. Most people assume modern survival gear has completely surpassed anything used in World War II. Synthetic tarps, Gore-Tex, polymer laminates, surely those are superior to anything from the 1940s. But that assumption collapses the moment you study one specific wartime fabric that quietly outperformed many modern materials. It was lighter than tarps, tougher than canvas, naturally breathable, and when exposed to rain, it became almost completely waterproof. This was not rubberized cloth or wax canvas. This was Ventile cotton, and it remains one of the most impressive survival fabrics ever developed. This story begins not with infantry, but with pilots dying in the North Sea. During the early years of the war, RAF aircrews who ditched into cold water faced an ugly reality. Even if they survived the crash, water soaked through their flight suits in just a few minutes, stripping heat from their bodies and killing them through hypothermia long before rescue arrived. Rubberized suits existed, but they were heavy, restrictive, and tore pretty easily. Britain needed something better, and it needed it fast. The solution came from an unexpected direction. Cotton pushed to its absolute physical limit. British textile engineers developed an ultra-long staple cotton woven so tightly that the fibres were packed under extreme tension. The weave was so dense that when dry, it was windproof, and when wet, the cotton fibres swelled, closing the microscopic gaps in the fabric. Water stopped passing through without any coating, rubber or chemical treatment. The result was Ventile. What made Ventile remarkable was not just that it worked, but how it worked. It relied on physics, not chemistry. That made it quieter, more flexible, more durable, and far more breathable than rubberized alternatives. To understand why this fabric mattered, you have to compare it honestly to what most soldiers and civilians used at the time. Traditional tarps and ground sheets were heavy canvas treated with oils or wax. They shed water, but they were stiff in cold weather, noisy when moved, and once punctured, they failed quickly. Rubberized fabrics cracked, degraded, and trapped moisture inside, soaking the wearer from sweat even if rain stayed out. Ventile behaved differently. In dry conditions, it allowed moisture vapor to escape, reducing sweat build-up. When rain hit, the fabric tightened itself. There was no brittle coating to peel and no oil to leach out. A single layer could block wind and rain while remaining wearable for hours. Double-layer Ventile, used in immersion suits, could keep pilots alive in freezing water far longer than any alternative. From a survival perspective, this mattered enormously. A fabric that keeps you dry but overheats you is a liability. A fabric that breathes but lets wind strip heat is just as dangerous. Ventile struck a balance that many modern materials still struggle to match. Ventile was not theoretical. RAF pilots wore it in immersion suits. Arctic and mountain troops used Ventile smocks and anoraks because they functioned in extreme cold where rubber failed. Special operations units favoured it because, well, it was silent when moving, unlike waxed canvas or oilcloth. Here's where this becomes practical for modern survivalists and historians alike. Ventile garments could be repaired in the field with needle and thread. No delamination issues existed because there was no laminate. If torn, the surrounding fabric still functioned. Soldiers learned quickly that keeping Ventile clean mattered. Dirt clogged the weave and reduced water resistance. Maintenance was simple but essential. Gentle washing, no harsh soaps, and absolutely no heat drying. This tells us something critical about wartime survival thinking. Materials were chosen not just for performance, but for long-term reliability in austere conditions. Ventile didn't rely on supply chains for replacement coatings or chemicals. Cotton thread and discipline kept it working. Now, if you're diving into the study of historical survival systems, or perhaps building a serious cold weather kit today, Ventile offers some lessons that modern gear often seems to overlook. First off, breathability and durability. They matter more than those fancy laboratory waterproof ratings we often hear about. And secondly, self-regulating materials can really outperform complex systems when it comes to long-term field use. In practical terms, what this means is choosing fabrics that can be repaired, maintained, and trusted over time. You see, modern Ventile garments are still crafted using methods nearly identical to the wartime originals. For bushcraft, cold weather trekking, or even static survival scenarios, a Ventile smock paired with wool insulation can really outperform many synthetic shells. Especially in environments where sparks, abrasion, and long exposure are more significant concerns than just pack weight alone. The World War II lesson here is clear. Survivability increases when your gear fails gracefully instead of, catastrophically. Ventile didn't suddenly stop working when damaged. It degraded slowly, predictably, and could be managed by the user. That philosophy saved lives then, and honestly, it still does now. Ventile never became famous because, well, it wasn't flashy. It didn't explode, fly, or fire bullets. But it quietly kept men alive in places where death was measured in minutes. In an era obsessed with high-tech solutions, this humble cotton fabric stands as a reminder that understanding materials deeply can outperform brute force engineering. So, the next time someone tells you modern tarps are the peak of waterproof survival gear, just remember that 80 years ago, wartime necessity produced something lighter, tougher, quieter, and frankly, still relevant today. If you found value in this deep dive and want more serious, no-nonsense explorations of World War II's hidden technologies, subscribe to Hidden Histories WWII, share this with a fellow historian or survivalist, and stay with us as we uncover the details that history textbooks leave behind.